to a breakthrough. In 1980, he created an equation of his own, one that combined all of the Julius sets into a single image. When Mandelbrot iterated his equation, he got his own set of numbers. Graphed on a computer, it was a kind of roadmap of all the Julius sets, and quickly became famous as the emblem of fractal geometry. The Mandelbrot Set.
It's not easy to describe the Mandelbrot set visually. It looks like a man, it looks like a cat, it looks like a cactus, it looks like a cockroach. It's got little bits and pieces that remind us of almost anything that you can see out in the real world, particularly living things. So it has a character that reminds us of a lot of things, and yet it itself is unique and new.
The Mandelbrot set is real, an absolute thing, no question whatsoever. Any mathematician or any computer scientist or student in a school can study it and find the same, describe the same thing. It's a common experience. And so such things that can be magnified forever and have infinite precision do exist, but they're not touchable.
It's a geometrical shape, an icon, if you wish, which somehow embodies as an example a very important aspect of how the world works. Somebody recently actually called this set the Thumbprint of God.
With this mysterious image, Mandelbrot was issuing a bold challenge to long-standing ideas about the limits of mathematics.
The blinders came off, and people could see forms that were always there, but formerly were invisible.
The Mandelbrot set was a great example of what you could do in fractal geometry, just as the architectural example of classical geometry is the circle.
When you zoom in, you see them coming up again, so you see self-similarity. You see, by zooming in, you zoom, you're zooming in, and pop. Suddenly, it seems like you're exactly where you were before, but you're not. It's just that way down there, it has the same kind of structure as way up here, and the sameness can be grokked.
Now we'll begin our serious exploration of the Mandelbrot set. A voyage which, in fact, could last forever and ever, much longer than the lifetime of the universe. I have here the full set, about 6 inches across. Now, if I blow this up, I'll increase the magnification now 13 times, and you see more and more detail is appearing. And the interesting thing is you see mini Mandelbrots, replicas, almost identical, yet perhaps subtly different, of the original set. And I can go on doing this. Here's a magnification of more than 3,000 times. So the original picture, about 6 inches across, is now half a mile across. And no matter how much we magnified it, a million times, a billion times, until the original set was bigger than the entire universe, we would still see new patterns, new images emerging, because the frontier, the M set, is infinitely complex. And when I say infinitely, I really mean that. Most people, when they say infinitely, they mean only rather big. But this is really infinity. is so remarkable, in fact, astounding, about the Mandelbrot set is that although it's infinitely complex, it's based on incredibly simple principles, unlike almost everything in modern mathematics. In fact, anybody who can add and multiply can understand the principles on which it's based. You don't even have to subtract or divide, still less use logarithms or trigonometrical functions to comprehend how the Mandelbrot set is created. In fact, in principle, it could have been discovered any time in human history and not merely in 1980. But the problem is this: although it's only based on adding and multiplying, you have to carry out those operations millions, billions of times to create a complete set. And that's why it was not discovered until the era of modern computers.
All right, family, I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer and then have a conversation real fast. But before I do that, let me simply close it. After I pray, heaven, the kingdom, may thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on a righteous path and guard us from evil. In the name we pray. All right, I'm going to reopen this. All right, all right. Hopefully it sounds okay now. Just doing a sound check. I heard some glitching, so I wanted to make sure I close the tab and reopen it because I noticed that's what works to get rid of that glitching that happens sometimes with a tab. Let me just open something up real fast before I talk about this. All right. Turn my screen share on. All right, so today I'm going to drop a link in the chat because I just have a interesting statement to make, and I think it's going to change some world views. Let me just show this. Let's go to modern human origin, right? Now, what is the answer? The common answer to what is modern human origins, right? You should automatically, if you part of the world, or if you know what the world says, it's Africa, right? Now, where do we get that idea? Is it based on fossils, or is it based on the biblical narrative? Is it based on historical documents? Why is it that they conclude that all modern humans start in the area of Africa? We had talked about it before, and we had talked about how the fossils, the actual fossils, do not show that they were only, how I word this. The actual fossils show that humans, whether they be ancient Hominins or ancient humanoids or modern humanoids, right? We know that they were not only excluded only in Africa. We know that there was no time frame where people only was in this time for a long time and everyone was an A or B group. Because that's what they want you to think in the out of Africa concept. You know what I'm saying? Show you something so that we can make a statement, and I'm gonna show you that this statement is gonna stand forever. What happens, right? Because I wanna really put the consciousness, understand to this concept. Because once you understand this and you understand what the world's been trying to do, you'll understand that it made no sense from the beginning. It made no sense from the beginning. All right. So first, let me show something, because I know this little, but note, there are no Paleolithic, Mesolithic, or Neolithic. I think I put an extra space right there. Neolithic, which is Copper Age or Chalcolithic time age fossils, right? No actual, this is what's important, right? There's like Chalcolithic or Copper Age, right? Actual fossil cultures of E1B1A1 in Africa. You hear what I'm saying here? So that's why I put the link in the chat. I put the link in the chat real fast because it has an actual, I'm talking about an actual culture, right? An actual fossil culture of E1B1A. Drop it or come up and show us live, right? Remember I said that. I'm going to say it a lot of times throughout this live, right? As I demonstrate this. I'm going to demonstrate to you that the out of Africa concept from the beginning made no sense. First, let me show you something about the earth. We got to first understand the land structure of the earth. And I'm going to show you that it made no sense from the beginning. I'm going to show you. All right. So think about it, right? If you're into the world's idea, even if you're not in the world's idea, just humor me as I do this. If you're into the world's idea that the whole world began from a big bang, right? And all of a sudden the earth was all these dust particles and all of a sudden they all came together. If you believe that, pay attention to what I'm about to show you. I'm going to show you something that's important to understand about the human origins and origins itself that they illustrate. Watch this as I show you something of what people know, and we get a good understanding of something. Now, it has to do, I'll do a live later and talk about basically a couple different widths that you're seeing here. But I want to make a statement with this note today. Look at this. I want to show you something. I want you to look at this right here. Look at this. Now, if you look at this, India, Australia, Antarctica, we got South America, we got Africa. And if let's just look at what it's saying here. I want to show you something. What it's saying here. He has an interesting conclusion, right? This is going to be a very interesting read from a professor, right? This is going to be a very interesting read from a professor that talks about something that's important to know about Pangea. That when we actually think of human origins and people conclude that only people started here, they're forgetting something, right? They're forgetting something. What is the mechanism scientifically that started a human? Are we saying that only the species that rose humans in Pangea started only in this area? What is the evidence of such a conclusion, right? Think about that. Think about what I'm saying here, because someone might say, oh, well, that's such and such million years ago. But I'm going to show you that even scientists are starting to realize that this is not actually that old. You're gonna start seeing something fairly interesting about the way that these plates actually had moved. The way that they had moved is important. That it wasn't just a random cracking and all of a sudden they just slowly drift away. In millions and millions of years, it took them to move away. But rather, I'm going to show you something a little later that actually shows by actual scientific methods that these moved away quickly, fairly quickly. And it has to do with such effects like things like the Younger Dryas and things like that. We'll talk about that in time, in a good time. When we talk about the wiping out of, there's a wiping out of Neanderthals and Denisovans, ancient human hominins, right? That's also why I got it open real fast. Let me just point to something, as I think we have to make sure that we point this out very carefully. Let me put it to... put it a little further back because I got to show this. Probably need that piece. Let me just show something with a decent time scale. So, all right, here. All right, so we was talking about this for a while about how humans scientifically have rose up to the point to we get to modern humans or Homo Sapiens, right? After the changing of said Homo Auguster, and then he turns to Homo erectus, and then he becomes Neanderthals and all those Denisovans and whatnot into Sapiens and whatnot. Now, what's important about that? Let me just put something aside real fast. What's important about that is this. Let me tell you something real fast. If we conclude that the whole world, now look at this when I point to this. You see this age here, right? 7 million years old. Just remember that as we go over these things. We got fossils of humans that age in Europe, right? I point out a lot of these different things. I'm not going to go to right now, right, into the ancient things, because my point is on one point. But I want to first point out something right here, right? Watch what's important to understand about these continents and how they were connected, right? Because the way that we know they're connected, right? I'll go maybe this Sunday. I'm gonna go into something a little deep, but it's gonna really illustrate something about origins, right? When we think about these areas and we can see which ones are connected, why are we only concluding that the mechanism that started the evolution of said human was only in this area of Pangea? That when they split apart, some reason there was some mechanism that was only here that supposedly we don't have anywhere else, right? But we know that's not true because we went over this in detail, that we actually have evidence of fossils all around the whole world at enormous ages, right? That's something that's important. Notice the separation, right? This is what's important about this, that we can see the evidence of the connection of these areas, that these all would have been connected at one point. And then they had separated, right? All these little separated and started to make their own areas of mass, right? But notice something interesting. You got living species and living species over here, and the species from other continents are the same species, right? They're going to have some different genetic differences, but they're going to be the same types of species, right? Types of species that we find from a distance. Now think about that, right? If the mechanism supposedly to the said evolution of animals was all across the world and it started to happen before the world had split apart, and you got evidence of the world splitting apart and these creatures existing from one distance to another, right? These are living creatures with a similar connection, right? You see what's going on here? This creature showing evidence that it could have walked from here to here, having evidence that it was here and connected with here, right? This creature having connections with this land bridge, connecting these areas together. We got evidence of this area connected together, all these areas connected together, right? This is South America. This is Africa, right? That's India up there, right? And that's Australia, and that's, right? That's going to be Australia. That's Antarctica. You can see right there. And that was also important. Notice that these pieces of land are together, right? Notice that these pieces of land are together. Why is that important? Because not a lot of people actually think about, there's also another thing right after Pangea that's important to know about, right? Why is it important? We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about it because this is where we start to get an interesting change of the world, right? You see how this piece of area, this is actually going to be Europe and South of North America. Europe is in North America. When these broke, you'll get like it broke in basically first it broke into half. So you'll have these two pieces separate from this piece, right? And then you'll have basically a conjunction of lands that kind of stay together a little bit right here and then some here. But what happens later on, you get another separation, a major separation from this one and this one, right? And these start to separate. That's India. Now, it's important to note that when India was close and connected with Africa, it broke off and it's going to land to note that's Asia and that's Europe and that's North America. It's going to break off and it's going to go up there, right? We're talking about some scientific stuff, and I'm going to show you how it all makes perfect sense when you actually note it with the concept of it. So you see how what we're seeing today. Now, this is why you have obviously a lot of fault zones, right? You got a lot of movement of its original areas, and you can see a lot of almost like an outline of almost all these pieces of land. So you can see an outline of this one. Outline. You have different outlines around these different areas. But notice the plates. So you'll have different plates. You have your American plate, right? You have your African plate, which also note your African plate actually includes Arabia, right? You gotta note when it first was all together, these would have broke and it would have split about the area of Israel, right? The African plate actually goes up the area of Israel, up to the area of Syria, just to kind of show that real fast. I'm about to show you something. I'm about to show you something and keep this thought in your mind, right? The thought here is that there is no I don't know why I put it like that. There is no Mesolithic, there is no Neolithic, there is no Paleolithic, there is no ancient E1B1A that's in Africa yet. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna have a conversation about that because we're gonna talk about why is that important and how did they make it African, right? But look, this is the African plate. So you got the Arabian plate. So obviously you got a split there. So that created your separation of a said African plate and Arabian plate right there in a split. So actually Israel is in Africa, African plate, just to that understanding as we go over this, right? So you can see obviously these areas with Bart, you have some splitting of these different areas. That's important as we continue on. I'm going to show you something that's actually very important because we'll go over this. We'll go over this. It's really interesting because it's an interesting conversation by obviously someone who knows what they're talking about, that we're going to have a conversation in a time when it's appropriate. Not today, but we're going to talk about it another time. But I want to just make this point here with this piece of land, right? This is what I need to stress for this piece of land. Like you can see, so you have Pangea, right? You're going to have a major separation. Now, remember, we already established that animals were all over these lands in different parts of the land, right? We already established that. We established animals were all in these parts of land. And then we get a separation of this continent and this area, right? This is Gondwana land, and I don't know if you said Eurasia, right? You have some separation between these two areas, right? And then you'll get your continents of what you see today, which is going to be your North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, right? Obviously, you got your Australia, right? Antarctica, right? Because they broke apart. And that makes perfect sense when you're looking at some of the ancient writings, right? Of what happened. Almost every, right? When these split apart, why is it that almost every separate nation has a flood story? There's a flood story in almost every nation, from China to the Sumerians to North Americas or the Americas. These flood stories contest that was a catastrophic event that destroyed a lot of the original inhabitants. We know that this was a true thing when we look at the ancient evidence of events like the Younger Dryas, right? The catastrophic flood that rose 300 to 400 meters. So that's important to know as we go over this, because I got something I want to talk about. I got something I want to talk about a little later, because I found an interesting fossil and other things that it's important to have a conversation with. I think we're going to have a conversation in a good season on that. But there are no, remember, this is ancient times. But let's kind of move a little bit forward, because remember, a lot of people need to understand this, that we confirmed from here to here, even these ancient humans started outside of Africa, right? These ancient humans. And then once you get the lineages of said Adam, right? The lineage of said Adam, right? Which is going to be, some conclude as a 0, 0, or a lineage that would be pre-A00, 0, right? Y chromosome Adam, right? Which is a pre-A00 or A00T, right? And that would be basically like your ancient Adam, right there. We know that there's a genetic Adam, there's a genetic Eve, right? That means that we know that all humans are related. But look at this important information to know about. Y chromosome data taken from a Neanderthal from El Chadron, Spain, produced a YTMRA of, right? Pay attention, because remember, what was the question that I asked for the simplicity of what is human origins, right? Africa, they say. And they say about 300,000 years ago. Well, prepare yourselves for a change, because what's happening is happening relevantly quick. And we're talking about some very important papers to know about. So it goes right here. YTMRCA of 588, right? 588,000 years ago for Neanderthal and Homo Sapien, right? Now pay attention. This is why I was saying this, because the ages, as I said, some are gonna go up, some are gonna go down, and I guarantee you these ages are going to. Let me just draw it out, because if I say it, it might not make sense what I'm saying, because some things may end up sense, but I'm telling you, all I've been using is a scientific method, and I'm showing you that the scientific method itself is showing that they didn't use a scientific method with the out of Africa idea. Let me just make let's say this is sense right here. This is sense. This is what the world wanted, right? I'm gonna show you something. This is what the world wanted. The world wanted this. The world wanted you to start in Africa, and your mentality be set that as sense, and it wanted you to have that in your understanding of your mind, with not no actual confirmed fossils, right, of modern humans all starting in Africa, and wanted you evidence. It wanted you to actually, as you start to see more and more conclusions of millions and billions of years, to say, you know what, that makes sense. That all makes perfect sense. But at the same time, demonstrating to you ancient animals that exist all across the whole world, developed in all types of places, and want you to conclude that, oh, well, humans were a special species that only started in the areas of Africa. Though we do have ancient fossils that may predate some of the conclusions that we have outside of Africa of ancient human origins. because they want you to think that all modern humans, remember how I'm saying this. What's the difference between what I'm saying, modern humans? What is a modern person? All right, let's look at the out of Africa scale. Because remember, when we're talking about ancient humans, there's a major difference. There's a major difference in saying Homo sapien origin and all human origin, right? There's a difference between saying all human origin, because all human origin is concluding that a human developed only in the areas of Africa. That's what it's concluding, of all human origin. But by the time of Homo sapien, this is what they were concluding by the time when they start bringing out the out of Africa, right? Tell me if I'm lying. This is what they told people about the Africa concept. They said that this. I need a picture for this. I need a picture for this because let me just show why DNA origin. Right, that's all we gotta find. Why DNA origin? Right, they'll say it's from here, right? Okay, so watch this. Let's go to a classic tree of a modern full collection of one, like this one. This is something that we want. Let me just see if I can find a better picture of it, which it shouldn't be hard. I'm gonna just right there. This one is okay. All right, this one's okay. We'll work with this. All right, let me just open it up in another screen. All right. So let's get a good understanding of this picture. Right? Why is it important? They want you to believe that everyone started as an A00. I don't know if, but we already brought out multiple different papers that found A00s in the areas where they found Denisovans that actually was mixing with Neanderthals, that the Denisovans and the Neanderthals about in this area, and A00 was there, right? That's some of the papers that came out in 2021, 2022 that we were talking about. These are fossils that we're talking about. But this is what they want you to conclude. That now think about this. Just put this in your mind. If anyone believes that there is a bloodline of Jews, right? If you believe that there's a bloodline of Jews based on the world's method, that's impossible. Listen to what I'm saying when I say that. Why is it impossible? Because it's saying that every single person was the same persons. Look, let me show you something. Let me show you what I'm saying here when I'm saying this. I gotta really break this down, because I don't know if you ever seen when you can make a tree like this, but have you ever seen a tree illustrated, right, with the out of Africa concept of where human origins is? Go to I need a that I know that have made a very classic picture of the out of concept right here. All right, and let me just show you something. Let me show you modern humans, and this is how we know it's not right when we actually pay attention to where modern humans come from. Let's go right here. All right. Let's see how it goes. So watch how he produces it. Watch how he produces it. Let me just start from where they start to branch off at. All right. Here we go. All right, so let me just let it play. And just, this is what he's concluding. That humans started around this. You see this purple right here? He'll say that all humans only started around this area. Right? That's what the conclusion would be, right? There you go. Out of Africa, spin around right there. See that out of Africa concept? Right? So they'll say only humans start in this area. And they come out, right? And they spread all around the whole world. But what do they start out as? Because this is what's important. What genetics are actually starting to find is that we can find ancient individuals like, let me just type this down so you ST or UST Isham. Right? A lot of geneticists know about this lineage. UST Isham. Why is that important? Because it is a K2 group. K2 is so important because K2 makes your M NOP, which makes your Q and R groups. That's very important. Isham. That means that's like a lineage that makes many other lineages, right? And it's found 42,000 years ago, right? All right, so just remember that as I showed it fast, because you won't believe when they say the outer Africa time frame starts, and where they say that these lineages began, right? Watch when I show you with the whole understanding of it. You can understand it. So there it is. That's what they say. Now let's go back to the find that they have found. This is what's important. This is what's important, right? Remember, Y chromosome atom. That's what the out of Africa concept was saying, that Y chromosome atom started in this area of Africa or this area of Africa and started down here in Africa and worked its way out, right? That's the concept, right? That's the concept that we gotta run with. But watch, right? Remember how I was talking about in that area of Spain? Let me make sure I also show this in a note, that this is what I was showing, right? This what I was showing on those papers from 2001 and 2020 and 2002, right? This very year, actual paper, right? Let me just go down and show this. So I guarantee you without a doubt that once you this is why I put this out, because once you fully grasp this and understand what is happening before us, you'll understand that there was an illusion that caused all types of errors, right? I'm not just talking scientific errors. I'm talking doctrinal errors, right? So remember I was talking about that one that was 588,000 years ago, right? Right here. That said 588,000 years ago. They've been studying on it for a long time, right? They've been studying on it for a long time. Let me just show you this the age of this paper, right? This is gonna be from that one 2016, right? This is just 2016, right? Just like it says right here. This is that same source, right? Right there. And let me just show you something, right? So it's talking about that same find. This is why it's important. It's talking about that same find, right? About it's at 58,000 years ago. But they put a confidence level between 447 years ago to 800 and to 600. I mean 800,006,000 years ago, right? That's a lot of years for modern humans. But let's look at what they're saying, because remember, when I brought this out, the important thing about this is that there was a lot of the same thing, and they were recent papers that were coming out more and more and more. Let me go to one of them real fast, right? Let me go up here and go to one of them. All right, so here's one that's fairly recent. Let me just read another one. Remember, I was just showing this yesterday, but now I'm just gonna go into it a little more. So remember, what I'm saying here is that the information that I'm showing you was relevantly recent, and it's confirmed. So look at this. This is right. This is what happened when they found this one in 2016, right? While a lot of people were still going with the out of Africa concept, they were realizing and examining deeper into it and realizing that obviously this surpasses the previous dates that were suspected for modern humans. Remember, this is a study on Homo Sapiens, and remember, Homo Sapiens, again, one more time on that little tree. Homo Sapiens are said to be the last humans that came about. That's obviously under 1 million years ago, even under 500 million years ago, or 500,000 years ago. So we actually have a modern human 500,000 years ago, about the times where said Erectus was living, and a couple of different other humanoids, right? Neanderthals, Denisovans, and all that, whatnot. Which that's what you're seeing here. That obviously they found that the Neanderthals and humans obviously had some connections together, right? That's very important. So it's obviously, this one was actually dubbed the atom, right? They actually know that it was the atom that was with these ones, that was actually found with these ones. That's what's important. Let's read a little bit on what's happening here. So a little more on what's important to understand about this subject. Let me just go a little down. So it just talks about the out of Africa concept, right? Remember, it says that obviously erectus, the Homo erectus, was outside of Africa, right? But they say that when people came back to Africa, they were Homo sapiens. They came back as sapiens. They say that they're saying that based on finding a ancient human in Spain, they're saying that by that human, even that's declared as the ones that go into Africa, even the ancient ones, right? This is what they say. The direction of evolution in the phylogenetic tree of modern humans, right? Homo sapiens sapiens. So remember that modern humans is Homo sapiens sapiens with HSS. So whenever you see HSS, that means Homo sapiens sapien, right? So again, modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, HSS was established, right? This was where it's gonna go a little understand to understand, right? Inner alley by the applying progressive polygenetic analysis analyst to an MT. Now, this is why it's important. It's doing mtDNA and Y-DNA is what they found, right? To an mtDNA sampling that included an Eurasian. Now, watch what he say here about these lineages. Which ones are the Eurasian ones? Which include a Eurasian, a Lund, and the African Mbuti Sen. That's the Koshin, the Kosen. That's like your African, right? And your Yoruba. Okay, so why are we linking the Eurasian, the Mbuti, the Koshin, the Yoruba? These are really interesting lines to be linked together, right? It says the sampling that included, right? All those things. I'm just going to jump down. The examination identified the, watch what it says here, the African populations as obviously paraphyletic, thereby comprising the OOAH, right? Now, if you already know, it's saying that obviously these lineages are the lineages of the out of Africa concept, right? Now, watch what he says here. The finding, which was consistent with, what was it consistent with? The out of Eurasia hypothesis, OOEH, right? This is where we got to understand what's going on. Why? Because they're connecting the mtDNA that has connections with Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. I talked about this before, how the only way that you would have those mixes in men or women is if the women had mixed with this other peoples, right? And I talked about who they can be, right? It's very possible for them to be Cain. It's very possible for them to be whatever it is that they are. But these women, the women that would be with this other peoples, also, it's kind of like this. Let me draw it out so it makes sense. So remember, the reason why I want you to see this is because I want you to understand this. The reality of it is that they didn't have any evidence. But we are finding the evidence. That's what's happening. But the media won't accept it, right? The media won't accept it. But the evidence is adding up, right? So remember, here's the evidence. This is the media, right? This is gonna be media, and this is your conscious, your mind. Your consciousness is in between evidence and media. That's what your consciousness is in between. Is in between the reality of evidence versus media, right? What is media saying, and what is the evidence saying? So we got to look at the picture clear to get an understanding of this. But let me make sure I point this out so that we get an understanding of what I'm saying here of the mtDNA. All right. So I'm gonna make this with circles and squares. That's how I'm gonna make this. All right. So let's say this one is a male, right? And let's say this one is a female, right? I'll make that one a circle. All right, let's say this is a female. All right, now watch this. Let's say this one is a Neanderthal. Let's say this is a Neanderthal. Now watch this. Let's say he gets with her first, right? They get together, they have a baby, right? Let's say they have a daughter. Let's say they have a daughter. She gets the mitochondria from her mother, right? Boom, they have a daughter. But let's say all of a sudden this one ends up getting with this daughter. Let's say that happens. What are these two going to have? They end up having a daughter. Let's say they end up having a daughter. Now, what happens is this is what we see when we look at some ancient. What's important is there's a difference between looking at autosomal lines of modern people that only goes about 500 years back versus checking autosomal lines of the ancient fossils. Sometimes you'll have these like, I'm gonna just make it easy. They get some of the mixes from the other lineage. So let's say now she has, because what does a female have? A female, right? She doesn't just have one X chromosome. She has a X chromosome from her mother, and she has another X chromosome from her father that doesn't always get passed down. That's the same thing with men. Men usually have a Y chromosome from their father and an X chromosome from their mother, which usually doesn't get passed down. So they always usually get their mother's X chromosome. But now note that this one had made it with the daughter of this one. Now this one has a mutation. Now let's say this one ends up mating with this one again, right? And they have a son. Let's say they have a son, right? Let's say they have a son, right? And the son ends up getting with this one. Let's say this ends up what happens. And let's say they have a son or a daughter. Let's say this one gets with this one and they have a son or a daughter. Right? Just for time's sake, let's just make them twins. Let's say they have a twin of a boy and a girl. And they come out with some very interesting connections. Now, I'm actually going to make this yellow so we can have the same concept of understanding. So now he has the male, let's say the son has obviously the male line, but because of that autosomal mix from that one being born, she obviously has the mother's lineage, but she has a small percentage. That's why if you notice, they'll say a 1 point such percentage of Neanderthal, right? Or such percentage of Denisovan, or such and such and such and such, right? Because they get a percentage of it. But now this one had made it with that one. Now this one has the mix from the daughter's X chromosome and the autosomals that was inside that one still there, right? Because now she obviously being with this one, right? This one getting with this one, having that extra X chromosome from this one is going to pass the mother's line to this one, but it's still going to have those autosomals with it. This one as well. This one as well is going to get that. So now, obviously, this is speeding it up because remember, this can happen throughout generations of time. This can happen throughout generations of time. And it can get even to the point where this one, right? If this one was a obviously I'm not gonna keep going, but that's just an understanding that if this was modern human and this was the female and this was Neanderthal, that's how that mix can happen. That's how that mix can come to effect. That it's collecting a lot of autosomal information from the previous mix, right? It's just like, let's say someone was, it's the concept of someone being completely like dark skin and someone being completely pale. They mix. The kid has like a mid-tone. They mix and they mix and they mix. And that's obviously in a short time. But this is talking ancient times. Now, with that understanding, let's go back and read it. So this is what we're concluding, is that this is how you can have these lineages mix. but not make each other. Let's say a flood happened, right? Let's just hypothetically, right? For the sake of understanding. Let's say a flood happens and wipes out this line. Let's say he has sons and everything and wipes out all his sons and whatnot. But these ones live, right? This line ends up living, right? Or one of his sons end up living. Let's say one of his sons end up living, right? Maybe not this one or this one, or maybe this one ends up getting this one as a wife, right? Let's say that happens or something like that, right? Why is that all important? Because this is actually what we see. That's actually what we see genetically. What we see genetically is that if we go to the dirt cave and look at what they actually found out that every single line of the other lines are wiped out, right? Because remember, if this one had, let's say these ones was his women and whatnot, and these ones are all wiped out. So you can have lines all wiped out, right? These are gone, all gone. But these ones live, still having evidence that of ancient humans that were wiped out. That's what we're seeing, that all the ancient humans don't make the lineages today genetically. I'm saying honestly, genetically. They know that the lineages of past don't make lineages today, but they do have a autosomal link. They have some connections in them, right? You got some percentages, slight mixes in them. That's very important. So they have some they obviously related. That's important. But these ones don't make what is called modern humans, what they call modern humans. So there's a different line of people that don't make the people that survive after events such as this, right? I'm going to talk about some things real fast. So let's go about this very carefully, what we're saying here, because this is kind of a deep topic. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but what it basically says is this, right? When it's talk about those mtDNAs, an mtDNA integration from the Homo sapiens, which is your modern humans, into Homo sapiens, or how they go over. They talk about the mixes of Neanderthals plus Denisovans and whatnot. It says it was about 5,000 years before present, right? And Eurasian, right? This was what's important about what they get. They find out that a Eurasian, right, divergent amount among the ancestors, right, a divergent among the ancestors of the, right, it says here, the extinct Homo sapiens sapien, right, 250,000 years before present, the exodus of the Mambuti and Koshan into Africa. Note what it just said about the fact that the Neanderthals and the Denisovans mixed with these other lines, said about this time frame, in between these time frames, the mtDNA, right? That they have that evidence of that mix in them, and that it shows that because of the evidence of that mix and the fossils, it shows that they went into Africa, right? And that's just one paper from 2020, right? That's just one paper that was obviously building off of that paper from 2016, but that was from 2020, right? And we obviously see that they were continuing even in 2019. Before 2020, they would talk about some of these same fossils and some of the same things that they were talking about, what they found. Let me go to something else real fast. Let me close this one. So that's that one we was talking about from 2016 of the mix of the Neanderthals and modern humans that they were talking about. That was kind of an important find. Let me close this and go to one real fast from 2000. I got one from 2001. I'm see if I'll show that real fast. This one from 2002. Open that. That's from this year. See what they're saying this year. But let me grab the one from 2001 so that I can show you the steps that as it constantly went in time, it all made perfect sense. Let me go up to this one. Let's see if I can find it. Just point this out on the 2001 one. This one's interesting too, but I'm not gonna show that. That's the same one from 2000, and well, that's a different paper on the same subject from 2020, right? That's how you know that is real, when you start seeing other genetic groups going into it, When you start to see other genetic groups go to it, that means they found something. They found something. They're publishing papers on it. It's kind of important. And this one is very important because they're actually using what is called the novel find, the Y chromosome atom, which was a novel find, right? Novel, it was a reward-winning find, right? When it was found, because it was recently found, right? It was one of those finds that was recently found that was really important, I think, kind of important. I might go to yesterday's video and grab it from there because I posted on there and I put 2021 for that information. Here it is. Okay, so here's from 2021, and then we'll talk about this one from 21 real fast. And then we'll talk about the one from 2022, which I think I accidentally closed. I'll just open it real fast. I know where that one's at. Let me just click that right here. All right. Then we'll talk about some of the ones from 22. I think it's 2022. No, it's 2020. I think it's somewhere down here. Let me grab it real fast so I can point this one out too. Here it is. This is gonna be some information. Yep, 2022. All right. So let's remember, we just point out one from 2016. I showed you that they was talking about in 2019. I just showed you 2020. Here's what they said in 2021. Right? They just talking about the same thing about the same find of the modern humans in Eurasia. Right? The origin of modern humans in Eurasia. Right? The same thing about the out of Africa idea when they talk about is that the origin or is it out of Eurasia? Right? Watch what it says right here. Right? Remember I was talking about the mtDNA? In the present study, the mtDNA tree and the polygeny based on material inheritance, right? Maternal inheritance. Bad. So basically inheriting genes from their mother's line, right? Was compared to the nuclear, right? DNA tree of the parentally transmitted Y chromosome haplotypes, right? Y DNA. So they're looking at both of them so that we don't say, oh, it's just for the Y line or just for the mtDNA line. It's for the whole tree, for men and females, because they wouldn't move together. Watch what it says. The comparison followed genetic coherence between these two separate sets of data. Right, so it's letting you know that obviously it's going to be very important that they're going deep into it. Right, again, the full understanding of these things. The results were consistent with potentially 4 translocations. Watch what it says here of modern humans from Eurasia into Africa. What are those 4 locations? What is those 4 locations where humans actually started? What are those 4 locations? Let me show you. You got 1. You got 2, you got 3, and you got 4 right there. These are the 4 locations that humans actually started from. And I said this. If we're talking about this is where they're from, obviously, sure enough, that is where they started from because that's where people went here and here. And I told you in the story, it said that a person named Nimrod called them down to Sinai. Now, why is it that the Sumerian culture is one of the oldest? The Sumerians all the way to the place of Jericho. These areas are some of the oldest areas where the modern humans settled themselves. Well, of course, because that's where they had the verse, and they went over here. Why would they start in Africa? The biblical narrative never said that. And why would they do that from all the flood stories from all the nations around the world? Nor is genetics showing that. But let's go a little to it. Watch what happens here. Right. So four potential places, right? 4 potential translocations of modern humans from Eurasia into Africa. Watch what the earliest is. The earliest taking place 250,000 years ago before present, right? YBP is years before present. The results were, watch what it says here. Now that we're going to get the answer to the results, right? The results were accordance with the postulates behind out of Eurasia hypothesis, right? OOEH. At the same time, since they do support that these original ancient humans started in Eurasia, at the same time as they lent no support to the out of Africa hypotheists. That was in 2000. That was in 2021. Now let's go to 2022 and see what people are saying after some of this stuff is coming out. They're finding more older fossils. It's a 1.5 million year old fossil rewrites out of Africa theory in 2022. And I'll show you who ended up writing this, right? Just somebody who's looking at it, right? This person's a writer, or not, he's writing what he's seeing, right? Unbiased writer for Live Science. And he's saying that now there's some more evidence. On top of that evidence, this is not looking good for the out of Africa concept, right? It'll talk about where humans start and were said isolated to and said evolved from A groups. We don't go into that yet, that supposedly every single person was an A group. That's what they want you to believe, that every single person was an A group that we believe were Hamites. And if you've seen some of the geneticists, even like Dr. Nathan Jeans and other groups, they'll tell you that the A groups are Hamites. It's just that a lot of people don't know exactly how they split because of these years. A lot of times they don't go. A lot of times creationists, scientists, a lot of that, they don't want to go that far back because they're sometimes, I don't know what it is. Are they afraid? Because really, if you go that far back, it explodes on them. It explodes on the people that's putting out the information. Because it starts to show that they didn't even know how the world actually was when they had put out the out of Africa concept and multiple concepts that actually are shaken because of these things. So remember how I was talking about, obviously, animals. If you read the Bible, it tells you that when humans lived, animals lived at the same time. And that when Adam fell, that's when the animals were there already. So why is that important? Because I'm trying to let you know something, that these years obviously aren't what they are. And that's why we're looking at these things in such a way, right? So just to get a little understanding, that was just a little highlight. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but that's another piece from 2022. From 2022, on top of those other things that we were just reading, right? On top of those other things that we were just reading and whatnot. Let me just go to something else. This for something else. Close that. All right. So remember that. Remember what we just said, right? If someone still believes the out of Africa concept scientifically, I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know what you're trying to live on. But watch what happens. That's why we use first Y chromosome Adam, his origins. Now that you know that, now let's build. Let me show you something real fast. So remember, that was said the origins, right? Of sapiens, right? Homo sapiens, which are said to exist at a certain time frame, which are modern humans, right? They're said to be the modern humans. Let's go a little into the word of, let's go up a little bit and let's go over here about Y chromosome Adam, right? Because it actually talks about Y, this haplogroup A. Let's go back over here. All right, so let's say the out of Africa concept was real. Let's say it was real. If it was real, we got to ask ourselves 3 questions. 1, based on the fact that the world divided, why is it that only Africa would be the continent chosen to where people to come from, right? Was it better than any other continent to have more for the coming up of a species, for that type of species at that continent at that time, in comparison with the other humanoids that was in other continents previously for modern humans? Ask yourself that. 2, let's understand this when we go over this. A groups do not make CT groups, right? We talked about this genetically. CT is a split that A doesn't make, actually doesn't descend into and make other lineages. Why is that important? Because if, let's say, someone said they were a Jew by blood, what makes that person different than any other person? Because we all come from A. We all would be the same lineages. And then where would the split be if we all start with A and A lives today? That means we will all be the same group from the same family if we all come from A. Think about that. Why would anyone conclude that a J group or a T group or any other group would be the Jews if they believed in out of Africa? Because we all would technically be the same. There would be literally no difference in us. But that's not what we see today. We see detailedly genetic differences. We see high differences in these different groups. Some groups have this thing, some groups have that thing, right? Even the Y chromosomes themselves have factors to them, right? Some people probably think I'm lying. They probably think I've been talking and just making up stuff. I'm not using sources. I'm just quoting and just making up things. But let me show you something real fast. Right? Let me show you something real fast. We was having a conversation about some things. I just want to show you kind of something that's kind of interesting that I think is important. That they actually find out that, you know, your Y chromosomes have almost like a secret ability. It's like each one has his own secret ability, right? Here's something from 2001. Let me read you something real fast. This was found out about some genetic haplogroups, right? The genetic variation of Y DNA have been reported to influence male behavior. Now, that's kind of interesting, right? That's kind of interesting, right? That's kind of interesting. Let me make sure I left this thing on the screen for too long. Shalom, shalom. Yep, that's right. Shalom, shalom. How you doing, family? Shalom, shalom. Let me just get back to this thing real fast because we're almost to the piece. What I'm saying, and again, let me make sure I state this: there are no Paleolithic, Mesolithic, or Neolithic fossils of E1B1A in Africa. That's the challenge for this video today. For anyone saying a certain line of Bantu groups are African, right? Because they actually would lead outside of Africa, because you got a 2000 BC year old BMAC Iran culture of E1B1A. We got a 3000 year old E1B1A, and this is the out of Africa concept. Don't think that these concepts reflect the biblical time scale, squeezing of time scale. That's why it's weird when some people take said 2500 BC Isham, and then they'll try to say, oh, well, that surpasses the biblical time frame. We got to understand they're using an out of Africa time frame, which goes millions of years. So you got to be careful on how you go about that. So don't just take the biblical time frame and put it what's the word I'm looking for? A one-to-one. Don't put it a one-to-one on the chart. Like don't take the biblical time frame of 6,000 years and put it side by side on this. Like don't just sit it here like, oh, that's the link, and everything else past it is surpassing the biblical time frame. Like if the biblical time frame didn't actually tell you the beginning, right? This is God. If you believe in God, then you know that God is God, right? Don't put him in a box. Don't put him in a box like if he's subject to the world. He's not. He made all these things. We'll go into that another time. But listen to what I'm saying here. I'm going to go back over here so we can get a little more into this concept. Because I really want you to understand this. Because once you understand this, you're going to understand that there's something different and special about every single person. Watch what it says here. All right, so remember, this paper that I'm showing you here is a research paper from 2021. All right, so the genetic variations in Y DNA have been reported to influence male behavior, health risk, and immunity. So your Y DNA actually has different elements. So watch what it says. For example, right, in 2012, found a protective effect of Y haplogroup E1B1B1C. So the E1B1s got interesting protective element in it from prostate cancer. So E1B1B has an interesting element to protect it from cancer, but also some genetic functions have some disabilities and some have benefits. So it's like different elements of those things. Furthermore, it says a one in 2015 reported that smoking is associated with the loss of Y chromosome or chromosome Y in blood cells, which is associated with an increased risk of, just talks about humors and stuff among men. About what smoking could do. Obviously, smoking cigarettes, stuff they put in it avoid it. You know, it's bad. The stuff is not good, right? It's messing people up. A lot of it, they do it on purpose. But here's one from 2012. It just talks about also reported that Y haplogroup I is linked to a substantially, right, increase of, you know, obviously getting to understand of these things is a little artery disease, right? Let's talk about your coronary artery disease, and due to the down regulation, basically just talks about the loss of things of immune system. But you can get a good understanding of these things, right? A lot of these things are important to understand, that different parts of the DNA can have different effects. There's also this, I think this also talks about, you know, your DM55 is associated with pretty much, you know, all types of genetic levels to this when going over it. But it's all, you know, I would want to have another paper to go into these things just to say if it is truly that. But that's what they say, that some of the people of the Japanese men have a low sperm count. So scientifically, that's what they're saying. Sometimes that can happen. So just to get a little understanding of some things. So they just go into some of those things and whatnot. These are some real things and whatnot. They also talk about that apparently even the D group, it says right here, the D-M55 and several male basically psychological parameters such as perceived happiness and loneliness and whatnot, and they just talk about some of these traits are associated with haplogroup B and certain other groups. There's other papers that go into it. I never really got into the conversation of this, but I just want you to know that because these different haplogroups also have different what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like traits, right? They got these different haplogroups got certain special traits to them, and it just shows interesting differences, right? It shows that the difference might be a little higher than what people think. That for people to conclude that everyone started as an A group and then you get your other groups and whatnot, that's not what we're seeing today. We're not actually seeing it. And I went over this before in another paper when they broke down the actual mutation of A and showed you how the A group doesn't actually make the R group, because they did a direct study to find out if R groups actually come from A groups or if A groups make every other group. And they found out A doesn't get past CT. So any lineage that comes from CT doesn't come from A. That means they're not connected in that way, right? We've had talked about that A and B are the ones that actually are related versus D and E, YAP groups. They got the YAP insertion versus the CF groups, which makes your GHIJK in a large family, which I was talking about before, that on a fossil, a lot of people wonder when they talk about your R groups and your T groups and your J groups, and they say, are they the same? Are they different? What are they? You know, what are they? But they are one family. And we was talking about that we found an IJK and an HIJK, and I said they're going to find a GHIJK soon, a fossil of GHIJK, because they didn't find one yet. They didn't find a fossil of GHIJK. But this paper from basically recently, if I recall, 2019, I found a interesting fossil of a DNA of J and a male's line of GHIJK, because I was saying that GHIJK is one person. The splits are A and B, D and E, and CF, because GHIJK comes from F-M89. That's important to know. That's very important to know about, because that is what we were saying, right? We were saying it for a long time, and we have evidence for it. We can actually prove it. So it's something to know about. But again, the reason, that's just monophylactic family. So remember what I was saying, what my 3 points was, that the fact that the people aren't related in the way of this concept. What I'm saying is this. I'm saying that they want you to believe, let me just show a tree of it. They want you to believe, let's see if I got a tree here. Okay, here, this is what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that even though if we look at A on a tree and they'll be at the end of the stem, they want to believe that these nodes here are A groups. They want you to believe that these nodes right here are A groups that make a CT. That's what they want you to believe. But if you look carefully at a tree, or the design, or an unrooted chart, or a chart at that, an actual detail of it, not just a normal chart, or just a quick breakdown of it, you got to get into like the snips of it, and you'll quickly find out that the A groups don't make your CT groups, which this is what I mean by CT. You see this group called CT? That's your CF and your DE groups. Your CF and your DE groups don't come from A groups. See how they're on the side like that? And then these ones are on the side of it because this A wasn't here. This A wasn't here making this lineage. That's why they'll put like these little A's here, but we had talked about that in major detail. And we talked about how they found out that these A groups don't make everyone. They found out that these A groups don't actually make everyone. It was something that they were deriving and coming up with. Go over that real fast if you want, but let me show you something real fast. Let me just make it clear on here so that we can kind of point this one out. Let me make sure I point this out, because I'm also going to point something out on here. Right? Again, let me just make sure I state it one more time again, or even again. There are no Mesolithic, right? Let me just open this up. There are no Paleolithic. Someone needs to show it. Right? The link is in the chat right there. If you know anyone who says that there is a Paleolithic or a Mesolithic or Neolithic E1B1A, tell them to bring it to me. Tell them to bring it to me so we can put it on the chart so we can go over it and show it. So remember that other information I was surpassed this, and it showed that there were 4 places that humans originated from here, from up here, and from here. That's where the oldest fossils of humans were found. And that's older than this one. That's way older than that they were concluded. And this was a fossil. This was actually based on when they found A00 in America, right? They found an A00 in America, and they found modern A00s, but the fossils that they found did not come up to that age. The fossils that they found in the land of Africa did not come up to that age. That's what's important. There's a difference between putting the age of a said SNP or mutation versus a fossil, right? That's what I'm saying. There are no fossils of E1B1A. There are no fossils of even A00 this old in Africa. But by the actual fossils, they're actually over here on these areas. So that's important to know about as we go over these things. So very, very important that the out of Africa concept and its origin doesn't actually stand to actual truth. It doesn't actually stand to actual truth. So remember, all this that you're seeing here is all modern. Everything that you're seeing here is all modern on this little line here. Let me just go zoom in real fast on it, right? You can see when they'll talk about where they're at and everything, right? They put A00 down there. You see the star right there? They put A00 down there and they say everyone came from that A00. But that's what I was talking about in those papers from 2020, from 2016, from 2019, from 2021, and 2022, when they're showing that a lot of evidence is showing that the people actually started outside of the areas of Africa. And that's on A00 up there in that area with the mtDNA, right? With the mtDNA. That's what makes it important. All right, so let me put this into a final summary so we can get this understood, because notice how many times I said it. I said it on another live before and no one showed nothing, right? Because there is nothing. But if you look up, watch this. E1B1A. A fossil or something. Right? Let's say you want to find something. Now watch this. Haplogroup E1B1A is an ancient brother to E1B. All right? Is it ancient? But has left a completely different fingerprint on the world today. These branches split from one another around, say, 47,000 years ago. Now, ask yourself, what are they basing that split on? Right? Ask yourself, what are they basing that split on? They have a fossil culture with that age. Are they basing that on the mutation rate? or are they basing that on a fossil found E1B1A? Because of that age, they'll say, oh, well, the age of it, a lot of times they'll try to boost it up, or they'll try to bring it down. If you ever seen a geneticist break it down, they'll show you that it was only about between 6,000 and 4,000 years ago for that one. But that's in the out of Africa concept. They found it's actually really young. But you can see right here, they'll say, oh, it must have started over here and went over here and went into other different places. They'll say that's where E started. But ask yourself, have you ever seen an actual culture, a fossilized culture of E1B1A that old, right? Obviously, this page didn't have one. It's just writing. It doesn't actually have a actual fossilized culture. In fact, let's go on and check Wiki's source game on it. Let's see how Wiki displays, right, its understanding of E1B1A, because it should be kind of straightforward. Go to not this one. Let's go back. All right. So here's the first branch of E1B1A. The earliest branch of E1B1A, we should find a really fossil, right? We should find there should be an obvious old fossil in it. It just talks about some downstream SNPs and everything. It talks about this one. EM80 may have original. So it's now notice the word. This is the root words you want to pay attention to. May. Did it? Or is it a may have? Is it that it was found, or it may have thought it was found? Thought it might have been something that was there, or hope that they find something there. They'll say 14 to 10,000 years ago. They'll say it was there. Okay, let's check their sources. What are they using? They're using Y-tree, which is not a fossil source. That's important. This is a source for SNPs, right? That's a source for SNPs, not for fossils, right? That's very important. And we can go to the other source, right? They got a bunch of sources here. Like they surely are sourcing they're citing their sources, no doubt. Oh, here is ISOGG, which is not a fossil, a list of fossils, right? This is SNPs. That's going to be SNPs, right? That's important that we're looking at SNPs. Let me go back to that. Right, so again, let's keep checking his source game and see how it's going. Here's his third source, right? Oh, that what we see here. Africa during the last 150 years. It surely must be something there. Sounds like it must be. It's just doing a Wayback Machine on there. Okay, that's kind of odd for Wiki to use a Wayback Machine. Is it supposed to be a potential real source like that? So what are we seeing here? What are we even reading? It's just somebody typing out some conclusion. No genetic. There's no connection. Is it even an E1B1A that's talking about? No, it's not even talking about E1B1A. It's just talking about whatever it wants to talk about. It's just having a conversation. Let's try some of the different ways to type E1B1A. Let's try B38. Let's try M2. That's sad. That's really sad. Why would they even use such a source like that? Right? Wayback Machine. All right, let's go a little down. That was interesting. Let's go to his. No, we looked at 1, 2, 3. Let's look at his fourth source. Oh, that looks a little more Bantu. Ah, there it is. Now we're getting to something. Doesn't it sound familiar? The Bantu expansion revisited, a new analysis of the Y chromosome variation in Central Western Africa. Now, how old is that? 3,000 to 5,000 KYA. What time frame is that scientifically? Isn't that the transition where we get the Bronze Age going on to the Iron Age? We'll actually get after the Bronze Age. Let's understand something. We already talked about this. Why do we talk about it? Because that's on the outer Africa scale. Think about that. And the outer Africa scales, right? The outer Africa scale scales millions of years. The out of Africa scales millions of years. And E1B1A, that's the earliest one. Right. What's after the understanding, once you understand that they actually didn't have a source to establish such a foundation like that, right? What are they actually trying to say? Because if you're paying attention, if you already was paying attention to the actual fossils, you should already know there's older in Africa and outside of Africa before that. And even E1B1A connects to P2, which P2 is found in the Natufian area. But let me go to something real fast and point to that real fast. So, because I want to show you this without a doubt. I want to show you this with no doubt of the understanding that I'm giving you here. That this, everything that I've been showing, we're not winging, right? We're just citing sources. That's all we're doing. And a lot of times, a lot of these words I can barely pronounce. But I know that it's true because I'm in the medical field. That's my field. That's why I'm working in the medical field. And I'm obviously talking to the professionals and studying with the professionals and hearing what they're saying and getting their point of view on these things. And I just showed you that many other professionals are concluding what I'm concluding, is that the out of Africa model doesn't actually stand to actual factual information. Now look at the ages. Look at the ages of these lineages that we see here. Remember, all these are actual sources. All these are papers. But let's find one. Let's find one in Africa. Who's the oldest ones in Africa? Here's Africa, Morocco. These are Africa. We got an H1 in the lands of Africa, just to show you that these are real papers, right? Just to show you this. I'm showing you this ink, so you can look at these things fairly on a whole understanding. Because remember, the conclusion was that E1B1A was African, right? What would make that African? What would make this age and make the totality of E1B1A African? Like E1B1A African. If in Africa, on their scale of guessing, right? Let me make sure I put this down here. On their scale of guessing, said 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, right? And remember, they're connected with the Bantu. And if you already know, the Bantu, right? The Bantu are going to be Iron Age, right? The Bantu are going to be Iron Age, whatnot. So this is just going into the Iberasians or Iberasians, how you say that? This is going into that group. So I already talked about that, the Iberasians. So they're about that age in Morocco. You can see right here, right? They'll be about in the corner, a little bit lower than Spain, right? Into the areas of Africa, right? In the areas of Africa. But notice, right? These mtDNAs and then that C right there, and a lot of these in those areas, right? That was in China though. This is Japan. You can see right here in Morocco though, the mtDNAs that are there, right? Are these Africans? Are these going to be considered Africans? As anyone is H and U African, because we found a split of H and U, right? We found H and U in Africa. Is these now African? Are these African because they're 20,000 years ago in Africa? Is H, U, and R African? As anybody, right? You can look it up. These mtDNAs in the Iberasians or the Iberasians, and notice the lineage that's in them. Let's click it, because remember, obviously they have an E1B1B down there, but look at the mtDNA, because there should be on this E1B1B. There it is, E1B1B. But note the mtDNA that's there. Are these Africans now? Are these gonna be African mtDNAs? Because they're older than E1B1A even existed. They're older than even when E1B1A even existed, right? That's just kind of important. Notice this one, 5,000 years ago. Is T now African? Is T actually African now? Because I got this same paper. I got the same paper, and it shows how old tea was in Africa. Is tea now an African lineage in Morocco? Why? What's the big deal with making only E African? You know why tea is not African? Let me just show you something. You see this T group, and you see these mtDNAs. You know why these aren't African? Because they always connect them to their roots. If you connect them to their roots, it makes them not African. But if you don't connect a group to a root, conclude that they must have existed only in that area, then there you make them African, right? If you cut them from their root, which is CT for the men, for for DE and CF. But CT, if we look carefully with CT, right? This is the CT. We can notice that its origins is obviously outside of Africa, 32,000 years ago. So, and then if we go to, obviously, there's different E1B1As, like I said, they're older outside. If we connect them to their root, it'll start to bring all lineages outside of Africa gradually when you look at their roots. Because when you look at their roots, it brings them out of Africa. It brings them out of the areas of Africa, like this one. Right? You can see the age of it. You can see it right there. And remember, we point out where were the places of origin of all humans, right? When we was looking at that full picture, again, at all human origin, based on the scientific scale, and that came out in 2021, right? You can see right there from here, 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 and here. So remember, here was a main area of human development. There it is. So we can see he's around that area. It said 32,000 years ago. So that's a long time to be in that area. So again, that was, and these are Paleolithic and Mesolithic and Neolithic type stuff. So you got your pre-pottery as Neolithic and everything. These are ancient ages. So there is no in Africa, there is no E1B1A M2 found in the areas of Africa older than some of the papers that we went over. I put a video in the description where we went over all E1B1A's location and his movements and stuff. And we know that, like I said, it's going to be going from the areas of actually starting from the Natufian area, from the P2, from the Natufian, leaving out, going to areas of France, about said on out of Africa scale 9,000 BC, right? Or said about 9,000, not rather 9,000 years ago, 7,000 BC, 9,000 years ago on the out of Africa scale. And then it goes to Peru, said between 5,000 to 3,000 years ago. And then after it goes to Peru, it goes to the BMAC culture, right? About 2,000 years ago, 2,000 or 2,000 BC, right? BMAC culture. And remember, I'm talking fossil culture. Fossil culture. And you can see they have listed E1B1A. And this would be a culture that was about 2000 BC, which we were talking about before, right? This is obviously BC culture, the culture that we found there. That's dating like 4,000, close to 5,000 years ago, said on the out of Africa scale, to get the understanding of that. So that's a long time ago for that lineage. Besides of the places that it went to out of the areas of Africa before it went into it. It's not just a lineage that just was evolved there, and that's where we see it only, but we found it in multiple different places at multiple different ages, right? And even the Bantu is Iron Age. That's what's important. All the Bantu culture is Iron Age. That's what's important about this information, is that what is connecting to is the Bantu culture, which we already had talked about, that the Bantu is Iron Age. And we showed the evidence, we showed the actual evidence that all the Bantu culture was relevantly recent within the last 1,000 years. I mean, the last 1,000 BC, which, you know, with that understanding that this lineage was going down into the areas of the last 1,000 BC, kind of paints a really important picture that the Bantu people, that, remember, Bantu is the Zulu word for people, right? The people went down into Africa relevantly recent. That group wasn't native to that area, but went down there recently, because that's what the Bantu group is an Iron Age group. That's the only age of the Bantu, is that it's early Iron Age. It's not Mesolithic, it's not Paleolithic, it's not Neolithic, it's not even Chalcolithic, right? It's Bronze Age, to be honest with you. So these careful, because what you're actually seeing there on these years. Let me just go back right here and just let me close this one. We don't need that. Let me just kind of express something here. Let me close this. We don't need that either, or this. I'm just gonna close some of these. Let me just state something on this. So remember, we got this from that site. We're checking Wiki's sources and to see how they're displaying the ages of this lineage with its sources, right? And you see right here that they'll say it's now, let's see what age that would be if we put that into understanding. 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. Years ago. Take 2,000 off of that. That's about 1,000 years ago to 2,000 years ago. Well, BC. That's about 1,000 BC to let's give it a that same around, right? That's like 1,000 BC to, they can push it back and try to say 3,000 BC, right? They'll try to say a long time ago. That's what they'll try to say. They'll try to say at least 1,000, 3,000 BC, they had to be down there, right? The development of the linguistic language of these languages, because the time that Bantu language developed was right about the same time as kind of like the developing a little later of the Indo-European language, right? So you got to ask yourself who will be around the area of the Indo-European languages also to date these things together, which Indo-European is a language that was developed later, not earlier, right? Indo-European is not an ancient language. It's a language made from other languages, but it will be linked to Indo-European, ain't Proto-Indo-European. Just to get a little understanding of that. That this would not be that old. This would actually not be that old. This would actually be very recent. This would actually be a recent movement, not an ancient movement. This is actually going to be a recent movement. But that's going to be its source. That's going to be a source because that's actually one of the earliest sources is that Bantu group. There's no archaic group that you find there that's Neolithic. There's no Neolithic E1B1A. There's no Paleolithic or Mesolithic. Think about it. Because this, like I said, with the D group and this group, if we can establish what this group actually is, I'm telling you, it's going to give a proper understanding to what these genetics are actually showing. Because it's a crime to not actually understand what's going on around this. It's a crime. It's actually a crime because go and say that people start in Africa and everyone's going to take it as science. It's not actually going over real information. It's just guessing, right? But remember, I'm showing you the actual evidence of these things. I'm showing you the evidence of what they're saying. I'm showing you the evidence of what they're saying. Just go and see if they have any other sources or any other fossils, right? It should be one of those easy things, right? If you're concluding that it's African, there should be something a little more than that, right? We shouldn't just go off of that, because if you go off of that, we're not understanding that ages surpass that. And if that's all we got for E1B1A, we got to find out where his parent lineages were, which were in Tufian culture. So that would obviously put it back into the areas of the Levant of origin. And that's why we was talking about the Natufian and the movement of the Olmec group, said Olmec, the E1B1A groups, the Olmec group that actually left the Natufian culture, right? All these things I'm saying, obviously I can provide sources from, but I want to get a good understanding quickly out, even though you know how we go. We take our time with these things. But again, E1B1A, no Paleolithic, no Mesolithic, and no Neolithic. There's no cultures of them. There's no actual cultures of those groups. So just to show, now let's go into M2 on here. So obviously for the root V38, that's all they got is a conclusion on a band group that might have not been that old in the areas of Africa, which is very important. And we had talked about that too, because we had an actual paper that told us that there were no no Bantus found in the ancient Africans. There were no Bantus found in the ancient Africans. I'm talking Africans that said past 5,000 years ago, right? There was none found there. But we know which ones were found there in the areas of ancient Africa, because we can look at the fossils, right? The fossil record. The fossil record would actually tell us what we had there. And remember, I had talked about it before, that A groups went into Africa first. A groups and B groups went into Africa first. That's important, that we know that they went into the areas of Africa first. Let me actually put it by Y-DNA, right? So we know that the A00 actually started outside of Africa around areas of Russia, right? Belgium, Spain. That's important. But you can see right here, for this one, that one's kind of old, not that old. See, you can see right there, that one's about 8,000 years ago, a L0 with a B. So that one will be obviously older than E1B1A, right? So it lets you know which ones are older in the areas of Africa versus which ones are recent. Which ones came recent and replace whom. That's why it says right on M2's site, notice right here, it says this about E1B1A. We know that it dominates the area now, but it says traces of earlier inhabitants, however, can be observed today in these regions in Africa via the presence of wide